The rain came down hard that Tuesday evening, turning the sidewalks into small rivers and making everyone hurry to find shelter. Maya pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as she walked home from her shift at Corner Cafe. Her sneakers were getting soaked through, but she didn't have money for new ones right now. Every dollar counted in her family. At 16, Maya had been working part-time for almost a year now. Her mother, Rosa, cleaned office buildings at night and struggled to pay their rent and bills on her own. Maya's father had left when she was 12, and since then it had been just the two of them against the world. Maya didn't mind working after school. In fact, she liked the independence it gave her, even if it meant less time for homework and friends. The cafe job wasn't glamorous. She wiped tables, took orders, and cleaned up after customers who sometimes treated her like she was invisible. But her boss, Mrs. Chen, was kind and let Maya take home leftover sandwiches and pastries at the end of each day. Those leftovers often became dinner for Maya and her mom. Tonight had been busy. The rain brought people inside seeking warmth and coffee, and Maya had earned $8 in tips. She counted the crumpled bills in her pocket as she walked. $8 might not seem like much to some people, but to Maya it was significant. Her mother needed to pick up medication tomorrow, and they were $5 short of the prescription cost. As she passed the grocery store on Main Street, Maya noticed something that made her slow down. There was an old man sitting on the ground near the entrance, partially protected by the store's overhang, but still getting wet from the rain that blew sideways. He had a small piece of cardboard in front of him with words written in careful handwriting. "Anything helps. God bless." Maya had seen homeless people before, but something about this man was different. He wasn't asking people for money as they walked by. He wasn't making noise or bothering anyone. He just sat there quietly with a dignity that seemed out of place for someone in his situation. His clothes were old and patched in several places, but they were clean. His gray hair was messy from the rain, but his face was calm, almost peaceful. Most people walked right past him without looking. A few glanced his way but quickly looked away, as if making eye contact might somehow obligate them to help. Maya understood this reaction. When you don't have much money yourself, it's easier to pretend you don't see people who have even less. But Maya couldn't look away. There was something about the old man's quiet presence that spoke to her. Maybe it was because she knew what it felt like to worry about money, to wonder if there would be enough for basic needs. Maybe it was because her own mother had taught her that kindness costs nothing, even when everything else does. She stood there for a moment, rain dripping from her hair, looking at the $8 in her hand. $5 would complete the money needed for her mother's medicine. That left $3. Bus fare home was $2. That would leave her with $1, but she could walk home instead. It was only about 2 miles, and she had walked farther before. Maya approached the man slowly. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a striking blue color, and they held an intelligence that surprised her. Most people might expect someone in his situation to look defeated or desperate, but this man's eyes seemed alert and aware of everything around him. "Excuse me," Maya said softly. The man looked up at her with those remarkable blue eyes. "Yes, young lady." His voice was gentle and educated, which caught Maya off guard. She had expected something rougher, more broken. Instead, his words were clear and well-spoken. I wanted to give you this," Maya said, holding out a $5 bill. Her hand shook slightly, not from the cold, but from the magnitude of what she was doing. This money represented her mother's medicine, but looking at this man sitting in the rain, she felt like she had no choice. The old man stared at the money for a moment, then looked back up at Maya's face. "Are you sure?" he asked. "You look like someone who might need that money yourself." Maya was surprised by his consideration. "I'm sure," she said, though her voice wavered a little. "Everyone deserves help sometimes." The man reached out and gently took the bill from her hand. "Thank you," he said, and the gratitude in his voice was so genuine that it made Maya's eyes water. "What's your name?" "Maya," she answered. "Maya, that's a beautiful name." "I'm Henry," he said, "and this," he held up the $5 bill. "This means more to me than you might realize. Not just the money, but the fact that someone your age, someone who clearly works hard for what she has, would share it with a stranger." Maya felt her cheeks warm despite the cold rain. "How did you know I work?" Henry smiled, and his whole face changed. The weariness seemed to lift for a moment. "Your hands show it, and you have the smell of coffee and fresh bread on your clothes. Plus, there's a kind of tiredness that comes from honest work. I recognize it. Maya was amazed by how observant he was. You're very good at noticing things. You learn to pay attention when you spend time on the street, Henry said simply. People become invisible out here, so you start seeing everything else more clearly. The rain was getting heavier, and Maya knew she should head home. Her mother would be getting ready for her own night shift soon, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was Henry's unexpected eloquence or the way he seemed to really see her as a person, rather than just another face in the crowd. Are you hungry? Maya asked suddenly. I mean, besides needing money, do you need food? Henry's eyes lit up with surprise and something that looked like hope. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning, he admitted. Without thinking twice, Maya turned toward the grocery store. Wait here, she said. I'll be right back. Inside the store, Maya bought a hot sandwich from the deli counter, a bottle of water, and a small bag of chips. It cost her exactly $3, which meant she would definitely be walking home in the rain. But as she handed the bag to Henry and saw the genuine amazement on his face, she knew she had made the right choice. Maya, Henry said, his voice thick with emotion, in all my years, I have rarely met someone with such a generous heart. Your parents raised you well. Just my mom, Maya corrected. And yes, she did. As she finally started her long walk home, soaked to the skin but somehow feeling warmer than she had all day, Maya couldn't stop thinking about Henry's eyes and the way he spoke. There was something about him that didn't quite fit with being homeless, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change both their lives forever. Maya couldn't stop thinking about Henry during the next few days. Every time she passed the grocery store, she looked for him, but he wasn't always there. On Thursday evening, after another busy shift at the cafe, she spotted him again in his usual spot by the entrance. This time the weather was clear, and Henry looked a bit better than he had in the rain. Hello, Maya, Henry said with a warm smile as she approached. The fact that he remembered her name made her feel good inside. Hi, Henry. How are you doing? Maya asked, genuinely caring about his answer. Better, thanks to you, he replied. That sandwich you bought me the other day lasted 2 meals. I made it stretch. Maya felt a pang in her chest. She couldn't imagine having to make one sandwich last for 2 meals. Are you hungry now? She asked. Henry hesitated. I don't want you spending your hard-earned money on me again. You've already done so much. But Maya had come prepared this time. Mrs. Chen had let her take home some leftover soup and bread rolls that would have been thrown away otherwise. It's not costing me anything, Maya said truthfully, handing him the bag. These were just going to be wasted. As Henry opened the container of soup, steam rose up and Maya could see his eyes close briefly, as if he was savoring the smell. This smells incredible, he said. What kind is it? Chicken and vegetable, Maya answered, sitting down on the concrete beside him. She had never sat on the ground outside a store before, but somehow it felt natural with Henry. You know, Henry said between spoonful, this reminds me of a soup I had in a small restaurant in Prague many years ago. The owner was this elderly woman who had been making the same recipe for 50 years. Maya looked at him with curiosity. You've been to Prague? Henry paused, and for a moment Maya thought she saw something flicker across his face. I traveled quite a bit when I was younger, he said carefully. Different life back then. What did you do? For work, I mean? Maya asked. Henry was quiet for a long moment, stirring his soup thoughtfully. I helped people, he said finally. Tried to fix things that were broken. There was something in the way he said it that made Maya feel like there was more to the story, but she didn't want to push. Everyone had a right to their privacy, even people living on the street. What about you? Henry asked, clearly changing the subject. What do you want to do after high school? Maya felt herself brighten up. This was something she loved talking about. I want to be a nurse, she said. I want to help people who are sick or hurt. My mom always says I have healing hands. Your mother sounds like a wise woman, Henry said. What kind of nursing interests you most? Maya was surprised by the question. Most adults just said, that's nice, when she mentioned wanting to be a nurse. They didn't ask for details. I think I'd like to work in a hospital, she said. Maybe in the emergency room or with heart patients. I want to be where I can really make a difference. Henry nodded thoughtfully. Cardiac care is incredibly important work. The heart is such a complex organ. Did you know that it beats about 100,000 times per day? Maya stared at him. How do you know that? Again, that flicker of something crossed Henry's face. "You pick up all sorts of information over the years," he said. "I've always been curious about how things work." They talked for another 20 minutes. Henry asked her about school, her favorite subjects, and her family. When Maya mentioned that her mother worked nights cleaning offices, Henry's expression grew serious. "That's hard work," he said. "Physical and demanding. Does she have health insurance through her job?" "Some," Maya said. "But it doesn't cover everything. That's why I work too, to help with the medical bills and stuff." Henry was quiet for a moment. "What kind of medical bills, if you don't mind me asking?" Maya usually didn't talk about personal things like this, but there was something about Henry that made her feel safe. "Mom has diabetes and high blood pressure. The medications are expensive, even with insurance." "Those are serious conditions," Henry said, and there was genuine concern in his voice. "Is she taking metformin for the diabetes? And what about her blood pressure medication?" Maya was stunned. "How do you know those medicine names?" Henry seemed to catch himself. "Like I said, you learn things over time. I've known people with similar health problems." But Maya wasn't convinced. The way Henry talked about medical conditions wasn't like someone who had just picked up information. He spoke with the confidence of someone who really understood these things. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya made it a habit to stop by and see Henry whenever she could. She brought him leftovers from the cafe, and they would sit and talk. Each conversation revealed new layers to Henry that didn't quite fit with someone who had been living on the streets for a long time. One evening, Maya was complaining about a difficult customer who had been rude to her at work. "He acted like I was stupid just because I work in a cafe," she said. "Like serving coffee makes me less of a person." Henry's face grew serious. "Never let anyone make you feel small because of honest work," he said firmly. "The measure of a person isn't their job or their bank account. It's how they treat others, especially those who can't do anything for them in return." The way he spoke reminded Maya of a teacher or a counselor, someone used to giving advice and being listened to. "You talk like someone who used to be in charge of people," she observed. Henry smiled, but it seemed a little sad. "I suppose I did have some responsibility once upon a time, but that was a different life." "Don't you miss it?" Maya asked. "Whatever you used to do?" "Sometimes," Henry admitted. "But being out here has taught me things I never learned in my old life. Like recognizing genuine kindness when I see it." He looked at Maya meaningfully. "People like you remind me what really matters." One day, Maya arrived to find Henry reading a newspaper someone had left behind. But he wasn't just reading the sports or entertainment sections like she might expect. He was deeply focused on an article about healthcare policy changes. "That's pretty heavy reading," Maya commented, sitting down beside him. Henry looked up. "I find healthcare policy fascinating," he said. "These decisions affect real people's lives in ways politicians don't always understand." "You sound like you know a lot about it," Maya said. "More than I sometimes wish I did," Henry replied cryptically. As Maya walked home that evening, she couldn't shake the feeling that Henry was much more than he appeared to be. His knowledge about medicine, his way of speaking, his insights into complex topics, the way he carried himself despite his circumstances, it all added up to something that didn't quite make sense. But whatever his story was, Maya was glad to have met him. In their conversations, she felt heard and understood in a way that was rare in her life. Henry listened to her dreams and fears with the attention of someone who truly cared. And for reasons she couldn't fully explain, Maya felt like she was helping Henry with more than just food and small amounts of money. She was helping him remember something he had lost along the way. 3 weeks had passed since Maya first met Henry, and their evening conversations had become the highlight of her day. She found herself looking forward to seeing him, to sharing stories about work or school, and hearing his thoughtful responses to whatever was troubling her. But the more time she spent with Henry, the more questions filled her mind. On this particular Friday evening, Maya arrived at their usual meeting spot, carrying a container of chicken stew that Mrs. Chen had let her take home. Henry was there as always, but tonight he was writing something on a small notepad with a pen that looked surprisingly expensive. "What are you working on?" Maya asked as she settled beside him on the concrete. Henry quickly closed the notepad and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Just some thoughts," he said, but Maya noticed his hand lingered protectively over the pocket. "Must be important thoughts to write down," Maya said, trying to keep her tone light. Henry accepted the container of stew gratefully. Everything's worth remembering if you pay attention to it, he said. This smells wonderful, by the way. Your boss must be an excellent cook. Maya watched as Henry ate. His table manners were impeccable, she realized. He held his spoon properly, chewed with his mouth closed, and even used the napkin she'd brought in a way that seemed almost formal. These weren't the habits of someone who had been living rough for a long time. "Henry," Maya said carefully, "can I ask you something personal?" He looked up from his food, those intelligent blue eyes focused on her. "Of course, how long have you been living like this?" Henry was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "Not as long as some people might think," he said finally. "What does that mean?" "It means that sometimes people's circumstances change quickly," Henry said. "Life can shift in ways you don't expect." Maya felt frustrated by his vague answers, but she didn't want to push too hard. "I just noticed things about you that seem different." "Different how?" "You know so much about medicine and science. You've traveled to different countries. You read complicated articles in newspapers, and the way you talk." Maya trailed off, not sure how to finish. Henry set down his spoon and looked at her seriously. "Maya, would it change how you see me if I told you I wasn't always homeless?" "I already figured that out," Maya said. "But it wouldn't change anything. You're still my friend." Something shifted in Henry's expression, something that looked like relief mixed with sadness. "Thank you for saying that." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Maya remembered something that had been weighing on her mind. "Henry, can I ask you about something else? Something I'm really worried about?" "Anything." Maya took a deep breath. "I want to apply to colleges to study nursing, but the application fees are so expensive. Each school charges between $50 and $75 just to apply. I've been saving up, but between helping my mom with bills and everything else, I can barely save $20 at a time." Henry leaned forward, suddenly very focused. "How many schools do you want to apply to?" "At least 5 or 6 to have a good chance of getting in somewhere." "But that's like $300 just in application fees, not counting all the other costs." "Have you looked into fee waivers?" Henry asked. Maya stared at him. "Fee waivers?" "Most colleges offer application fee waivers for students from low-income families. You just have to know how to ask for them." Henry's voice had taken on a different quality, more confident and instructional. "There are also specific scholarships for first-generation college students and those pursuing healthcare careers." "How do you know all this?" Maya asked. Henry caught himself again, that familiar flicker of wariness crossing his face. I've helped young people with these things before." "What kind of help?" "Just guidance, advice." Henry seemed uncomfortable with the questioning. "Maya, the important thing is that money shouldn't stop you from pursuing your dreams. There are ways around these obstacles if you know where to look." Over the next hour, Henry proceeded to give Maya the most detailed and sophisticated college guidance she had ever received. He explained the differences between various types of financial aid, recommended specific scholarship databases she should search, and even suggested how to structure her personal essay to highlight her unique experiences. "You should emphasize your work experience and how it's shaped your desire to serve others," Henry advised. "Admissions committees love to see applicants who understand the value of hard work and have clear motivations for their career choices." Maya listened in amazement. "Henry, you sound like a college counselor or something. How do you know so much about this?" Henry was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Let's just say I've had experience with the education system." "As a student or as someone who worked in it?" "Both," Henry admitted reluctantly. Maya felt her heart racing. Every conversation with Henry revealed new layers that didn't fit with his current situation. "What did you do, Henry, before this?" "I worked with people," he said, the same vague answer he'd given before. "I tried to help them." "That's not really an answer." Henry looked at her for a long moment, and Maya could see him wrestling with something in. "Ternal. Sometimes the truth is complicated, Maya. Sometimes people find themselves in situations they never expected, for reasons that are hard to explain." "Try me," Maya said softly. But Henry shook his head. "I'm not ready for that conversation yet." Maya felt disappointed, but she could respect his need for privacy. "Okay. But Henry, whatever your story is, I want you to know that you've helped me more than you realize. Not just with food or company, but with believing in myself." Henry's eyes grew bright, and for a moment Maya thought he might cry. "You have no idea what that means to me," he said. The next week, Maya came to see Henry with exciting news. She had spent the weekend applying for fee waivers and had already been approved by 3 colleges. She'd also found 2 scholarships specifically for future nurses that she qualified for. "Henry, you changed everything for me," she said excitedly. "I never would have known about any of this without your help." "You did the work, Maya. I just pointed you in the right direction." "No, it was more than that. The way you explained everything, the specific programs you knew about, the strategies you suggested, that wasn't just pointing me in a direction. That was expert knowledge." Henry was quiet and Maya pressed on. "And it's not just the college stuff. You knew about my mom's medications. You understand healthcare policy. You've traveled internationally. You write in that expensive notepad with a fancy pen. And today I noticed something else." "What's that?" Maya pointed to Henry's hands. "Your hands are clean and soft. Not like someone who's been living on the streets for months. They're like a professional person's hands." Henry looked down at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "Who are you really, Henry?" Maya asked gently. Henry met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked truly vulnerable. "I'm someone who lost his way," he said quietly, "and meeting you has helped me remember who I used to be." Before Maya could ask what he meant, Henry stood up suddenly. "I have to go," he said. "But Maya, I want you to know that knowing you has been one of the most important things that's happened to me in a very long time." As Maya watched Henry walk away into the evening darkness, she realized that their story was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. Maya had been looking forward to seeing Henry all day. It was Tuesday evening, and she had good news to share. One of the colleges she'd applied to had already sent her an acceptance letter, along with a partial scholarship offer. She wanted to thank Henry again for his guidance and see his reaction to her success. But when she reached their usual spot outside the grocery store, Henry wasn't there. Maya waited for 20 minutes, thinking maybe he was just running late or had stepped away for a few minutes. But as the sun set and the evening grew darker, she realized he wasn't coming. This was the first time in over a month that Henry hadn't been in his usual place during their regular meeting time. A security guard she recognized came out of the store to start his evening rounds. Maya had seen him speak with Henry before, always politely and respectfully. "Excuse me," Maya called out to him. "Have you seen Henry today?" "The man who usually sits here?" The guard, whose name tag read Luis, looked at her with recognition. "Oh, you're the girl who brings him food sometimes. Nice of you to look out for him. Do you know where he is?" Maya asked. Luis scratched his head. "That's the strange thing. This morning, around 10 o'clock, some fancy people in expensive suits came looking for him. A woman and 2 men, all dressed like lawyers or business people. They had a serious conversation with him, and then they all left together." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Left together? What do you mean?" "They got into a black car with tinted windows. Real fancy vehicle. Henry went with them willingly, but he looked, I don't know how to describe it. Nervous, sad, like he was leaving something important behind." Maya's mind raced with possibilities, most of them frightening. What if Henry was in trouble with the law? What if those people were debt collectors or government officials? What if something bad had happened to him? Did they say anything about where they were going? Maya asked desperately. "No, but I overheard one of them mention something about time to come home, and people are worried." Luis looked concerned. "You seem really upset about this. Was Henry family or something?" "He's my friend," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya spent the rest of the evening searching for Henry. She walked through downtown, checking the bus station, the library, the park, anywhere she could think of that he might go. But there was no sign of him anywhere. The next day after school, Maya continued her search. She asked other homeless people if they'd seen Henry, showed his description to shop owners, and even checked with the police, though they couldn't give her any information. On Thursday evening, feeling desperate and exhausted, Maya decided to expand her search. She took a bus to the other side of town and walked through areas she'd never been to before. As she passed the Greyhound station, something made her stop and look inside. There, sitting in the waiting area, was a man who looked like Henry, but somehow completely different. This version of Henry was wearing clean, well-fitted clothes, a navy blue sweater and khaki pants that looked expensive. His hair was neatly combed and he was clean-shaven. Most shocking of all, he was carrying a leather briefcase and had a smartphone in his hand. Maya almost didn't recognize him. If not for those distinctive blue eyes, she might have walked right past him. She was about to approach him when she noticed he wasn't alone. A well-dressed woman in her 50s was sitting across from him, speaking in urgent, quiet tones. Maya instinctively ducked behind a pillar where she could hear their conversation without being seen. "Dr. Harrison," the woman was saying, "this has gone on long enough. The hospital board is getting restless and your patients are asking for you. Dr. Peterson has been covering your cases, but everyone knows you're the best cardiac surgeon we have." Maya's world seemed to tilt sideways. "Dr. Harrison, cardiac surgeon?" "I know, Rebecca," Henry replied, and his voice was different too, more confident, more authoritative. "I needed this time to understand things I never bothered to learn before." "Understand what, Henry?" "You disappeared 3 months ago without any explanation. You missed board meetings, canceled surgeries, left your entire life behind. What could be so important that you'd throw away your career?" Henry was quiet for a moment, staring at his hands. "Do you remember the Gonzalez case? The 12-year-old boy?" "Of course." "Tragic situation. He died because his family couldn't afford the follow-up care he needed after his surgery. We saved his life in the operating room, but we lost him 6 weeks later because they couldn't pay for his medications and regular checkups." Maya pressed closer to the pillar, her heart pounding. "Henry, that wasn't your fault," Rebecca said gently. "You can't save everyone. The healthcare system has problems, but you're just one doctor." "Am I?" Henry's voice grew stronger. "Because I realized something after that boy died. I've been living in a bubble my entire career. I drive my expensive car from my expensive house to my expensive hospital, and I operate on people whose lives I know nothing about. I make decisions about their care without understanding what those decisions mean for their daily reality." "So you decided to become homeless?" "I decided to understand what it means to have nothing, to depend on the kindness of strangers, to worry about where your next meal will come from." Henry's voice softened. "And you know what I learned, Rebecca? I learned that compassion isn't something you can fake. It's something you feel when you truly understand someone else's struggle." Maya felt tears streaming down her face as pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. "There's this girl," Henry continued, and Maya's breath caught. 16 years old, works part-time to help her sick mother pay for medications. She has dreams of becoming a nurse, but she didn't know how to navigate the college system because no one in her family had ever gone to college before. "Okay," Rebecca said, clearly not understanding the relevance. "She gave me $5, Rebecca. $5 that she needed for her mother's prescription medication. She gave it to me because she saw a human being who needed help. And then she sat with me on the sidewalk and listened to my stories. She treated me with more dignity and respect than some of my colleagues have shown me in years." Henry stood up and walked to the window. "That girl reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place. Not for the money or the prestige, but because I wanted to help people who were suffering." Maya wiped her eyes, trying to process everything she was hearing. "I'm ready to come back," Henry said finally. "But I'm not going back to the same life I left. Things are going to be different. Different how? I want to establish a free clinic in the area where I've been staying. I want to provide health care to people who can't afford it. And I want to set up a scholarship fund for students from low-income families who want to pursue medical careers." Rebecca smiled for the first time since Maya had been listening. "Now that sounds like the Henry Harrison I remember. The one who went into medicine to change the world. I found my way back to that person," Henry said, "thanks to a remarkable young woman named Maya who showed me what real kindness looks like." Maya stepped back from the pillar, her mind reeling. Dr. Henry Harrison was one of the most respected doctors in the city, and he had been living on the streets to understand poverty and healthcare inequality. Everything made sense now. His medical knowledge, his education, his sophisticated understanding of college applications, even his expensive pen and clean hands. As Maya watched through the window, she saw Henry gather his things and prepare to leave with Rebecca. Part of her wanted to run up to him, to let him know she'd heard everything and that she understood. But another part of her felt like this was a private moment, a transition back to his real life that she had no part in. Henry paused at the station door and looked back, almost as if he sensed someone watching him. For just a moment their eyes met through the glass, and Maya saw recognition flash across his face. He smiled at her, a sad but grateful smile, and mouthed the words, "Thank you." Then Dr. Henry Harrison walked out of the bus station and back into his world, leaving Maya to wonder if she would ever see her friend again. Maya couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Henry's face in the bus station window, looking so different yet somehow still the same person she had grown to care about. She kept replaying his conversation with Rebecca, trying to make sense of everything she had learned. Dr. Henry Harrison, a cardiac surgeon, someone important enough that a hospital board was worried about his absence, someone wealthy enough to walk away from his entire life for 3 months just to understand what poverty felt like. And he had done it all because a 12-year-old boy had died. Maya understood that feeling more than Henry probably realized. She had watched her own mother struggle with medical bills, choosing between medications and groceries, skipping doctor's appointments because they couldn't afford the copays. She had seen the stress in her mother's eyes when insurance denied coverage for something they needed. The next few days passed slowly. Maya went through the motions of school and work, but her heart wasn't in it. She kept looking for Henry at their usual meeting spot, even though she knew he wouldn't be there. The grocery store entrance felt empty without his quiet presence. On Saturday morning, Maya was working an early shift at the cafe when Mrs. Chen approached her with a puzzled expression. "Maya, there's a man here asking for you. Well-dressed gentleman. Says he's a friend of yours?" Maya's pulse quickened. Through the cafe window, she could see a familiar figure sitting at one of the outside tables. It was Henry, but he looked like the version she had seen at the bus station. Clean, professionally dressed, carrying that same leather briefcase. "Can I take my break?" Maya asked. Mrs. Chen nodded and Maya walked outside on shaking legs. "Hello, Maya," Henry said, standing up as she approached. His voice was the same gentle tone she remembered, but there was something different about his posture, his confidence. "Dr. Harrison," Maya said quietly. Henry's eyes widened with surprise. "You know, I saw you at the bus station Thursday night. I heard your conversation." Henry sat back down heavily and Maya took the seat across from him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. "I'm sorry," Henry said finally. "I'm sorry I wasn't honest with you from the beginning." "I understand why you couldn't be," Maya replied. "But I have to ask, was any of it real? Our friendship, I mean." Henry leaned forward and his eyes were more intense than Maya had ever seen them. "Maya, those conversations we had were the most real interactions I've had with another person in years. Maybe ever. But you lied about who you were. I withheld information about my background, yes, but everything else was true. My gratitude for your kindness, my respect for your work ethic, my amazement at your generous heart. All of that was completely genuine." Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "I was afraid maybe you were just studying me or something. Like I was an experiment." "Never," Henry said firmly. "Maya, what started as my attempt to understand poverty and struggle became something much more important. You became my friend. You reminded me what it means to care about people as individuals, not just as medical cases." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Henry spoke again. "I came here today because I have something important to ask you." "What?" Henry opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. "I've been thinking about our conversation regarding college applications and your dreams of becoming a nurse." Maya's heart began to race. "I've established a foundation," Henry continued. "It's called the Second Chances Educational Fund. Its purpose is to help young people from low-income families pursue careers in healthcare." Henry slid the envelope across the table to Maya. "This is a full scholarship offer. 4 years of college, including tuition, books, room and board, and a living stipend. All you have to do is maintain good grades and promise to work in underserved communities for at least 2 years after graduation." Maya stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. "Henry, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because it's too much. Because I barely know you. Because—" Maya struggled for words. "Because I was just being a decent human being. I wasn't trying to get anything out of it." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Henry said. "Maya, do you know how many wealthy people I've met who give money to charity for tax benefits or social recognition? You gave me $5 when you needed it for your mother's medication. You sat with me on concrete and treated me like I mattered. You did that expecting nothing in return." Maya felt tears starting in her eyes. "But there's more," Henry continued. "I've also made arrangements for your mother's health care. I want her to become a patient at Metropolitan General Hospital where I work. All of her diabetes and blood pressure treatments will be covered completely. Henry, no. We can't afford that. You're not paying for it. The hospital has agreed to treat her as part of our new community outreach program. Henry smiled. Your mother will receive the same level of care I give to my wealthiest patients. Maya put her head in her hands, overwhelmed. This doesn't feel real. It's real. And there's one more thing. Henry's voice grew excited. Remember how I mentioned wanting to establish a free clinic? I'm opening it 6 blocks from here, in the heart of the neighborhood where I spent the last 3 months. I want to offer you a part-time job there while you're in college. Maya looked up. Doing what? Patient advocacy. Helping people navigate the healthcare system. Apply for assistance programs, understand their treatment options. All the things I wish someone had been available to help the Gonzalez family with. You mean I could actually help people? You'd be helping people every day, just like you helped me. Maya opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an official scholarship letter, signed and notarized, guaranteeing her full college funding. There were also informational packets about several nursing programs and a letter of recommendation that Henry had written for her. I don't know what to say, Maya whispered. Say you'll take the opportunity and use it to help other people the way you helped me. Maya looked across the table at this man who had entered her life as a homeless stranger and was now offering to change her entire future. Henry, why are you doing all this? Because 3 months ago I thought I understood what it meant to be a doctor. I thought success was measured by the complexity of surgeries I could perform and the amount of money I could make. But you taught me something different. What did I teach you? You taught me that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken in someone's body. It's about seeing them as a whole person, understanding their struggles and caring about what happens to them after they leave your office. Henry paused. You taught me how to be the kind of doctor I always wanted to be. 6 months later, Maya was finishing her first semester of college with a 3.8 GPA. She worked 15 hours a week at the Harrison Community Health Clinic, helping patients understand their insurance options and connect with social services. Her mother, Rosa, had started receiving treatment at Metropolitan General and was healthier than she had been in years. The stress lines around her eyes had softened, and she had even been able to reduce her work hours. One evening, Maya stopped by the clinic after her last class. She found Dr. Harrison reviewing charts in his office, but he looked up and smiled when she knocked on the doorframe. How was organic chemistry today? He asked. Brutal, but I survived. Maya sat down across from his desk. Dr. Harrison, can I ask you something? Henry, he corrected as he always did. What's your question? Do you ever regret it? Leaving your old life behind to live on the street? Henry leaned back in his chair and considered the question seriously. Maya, those 3 months taught me more about being a human being than the previous 20 years of my life combined. But do you know what the best part was? What? Meeting you. Finding out that there are still people in this world who give without expecting anything back. People who see others as individuals worthy of respect and kindness, regardless of their circumstances. Maya felt herself blushing. I just did what felt right. Exactly. And that's why you're going to be an incredible nurse. You understand that healing happens through human connection, not just medical procedures. As Maya walked home that evening, she thought about how much her life had changed since that rainy Tuesday when she had given $5 to a stranger. She was in college, her mother was healthy, and she was already helping people through her work at the clinic. But the most important thing hadn't changed at all. She still believed in the power of kindness, in treating every person with dignity and respect, and in helping others whenever possible. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes in the world. And sometimes, when you help someone else find their way, you discover something beautiful about your own path in the process.